702. The Political Desk.
All right, the political story you cannot ignore. We're going to be having a wide-ranging conversation with the Chief Justice of South Africa. Legal and political constitutionalism are deeply entrenched in South Africa. The judiciary has stood as a bulwark against the sternest tests for our young democracy at times. Because of the exercise of public authority, our courts have taken center stage in intra and inter-political party battles. Naturally, this would have led to criticism of judges, but at times, some of that criticism has been menacing. They have been shaken, but they have not stirred. Perhaps second only to the president in terms of public prominence is the man tasked with leading the judiciary, and he is in the studio as promised, the Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng. Good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us this morning on 702 Breakfast.
Good morning, my brother, and thanks for the invite.
Let's start with the political environment in which you are operating. There seem to be growing tensions between the three arms of government. What's your take of it?
I think it's only in a dysfunctional constitutional democracy that you wouldn't come across tension. It's an indication that some people are doing their work. I don't think it's anything to be particularly worried about.
I'm going to quote to you statements that were made by two sitting ministers. Admittedly, it was a little while ago, but nonetheless, I think it's worth raising them with you. For example, we've seen one minister talk about counter-revolutionary forces on the bench bent on destroying the ruling party, a drive in sections of the judiciary to create chaos for governance, a narrative that's totally negative that wants to create contradictions. That's one statement. Another minister talked about sections of the judiciary tending to overreach in areas one would expect them to tread very carefully in. Admittedly, this was a while ago, but both those individuals are in cabinet at the moment. That's not just a function of people being irritated because you're doing your work.
Well, it may well be. You know, when it really pinches, we lose it. Our sense of responsibility does escape us. But as you would recall, when that happened, we took it upon ourselves as the leadership of the judiciary not only to meet, have a press conference and have these issues addressed, but we had a high-level engagement with the executive led by the former president, came up with points of agreement in relation to how we're going to relate going forward, and it has worked by and large.
More recently, we've seen politicians, members of parliament talk about traumatized old judges, judges criticized personally, both in terms of race and gender, threats to go back to the bush because of biased judges. Your response to that?
Typical of a situation where people are frustrated, people are in pain and believe that one unfairness or the other has been meted out to them. But we've been very careful in addressing them. I know that some people who put questions to me expected me to confront those personalities head on. I think it's counterproductive. I chose to articulate the principle so that the people have a fair sense of where we stand in relation to this issue and how far we may be willing to go if necessary.
Let's be specific. I mean, we're referring to Julius Malema here, the leader of the AFF. He's the one who's made those statements about biased judges. When someone like that, who's not only a member of the legislature, but also sits on the Judicial Services Commission, says things like that, one has to be concerned.
Well, I think it then becomes the responsibility of those who deployed him to the Judicial Service Commission to address whatever needs to be addressed. Look at it this way, my brother. I chair the Judicial Service Commission, which, by the way, is sitting from today until Thursday. But I don't have authority over members of the Judicial Service Commission other than the judges. So whatever unacceptable statement they may make, whatever unacceptable conduct they may get involved in, it becomes another arm's responsibility to deal with them.
You've been criticized most recently, I think it was yesterday's Sunday Times. Veteran columnist Bongani Bingwa has this to say. He says, you seem to be, and I quote now, jumping from one podium to the next, pontificating about one subject, about every subject under the sun. He says that you are stepping into the political arena by making pronouncements and very direct admonitions to admonishments to politicians. He says this is unbecoming and dangerous. Your response to that?
I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with any personality. Let me articulate the principle. I've heard people say a judge should only speak through his or her judgments. And I've heard people say that judges should not be involved in politics.
Yeah.
It would help a great deal if they were to be specific. The constitutional democracy that we have, in particular the kind of constitution that we have, is highly political in character. If anybody were to read an article that was written by former Chief Justice Pius Langa some time ago, transformative constitutionalism,
right.
It's all politics. If anybody were to read our judgments, it's politics all the way. So people assume that they know more than they actually do. I shouldn't be here according to the logic of some people because I'm not here to deliver a judgment. And judges speak only through their judgments. I'm not too sure whether the columnists have made that statement, but I wouldn't be surprised. So, as and when I'm called upon to address a matter that touches on justice, a matter that flows out of the preamble to our Constitution, a matter that flows from our Constitution in its entirety, I'll deal with it. I've been called by people from all sectors to address issues of critical significance to the health of our constitutional democracy. I'm going to continue to do that and even more. So people would do well to inform themselves rather than assume that they know more than they actually do.
I want to go back to your appointment and the ferocity of opposition that it met with, the criticism. Really, I'm struggling in my head to remember a public official who was appointed to that kind of storm. How did you navigate it, and what lessons, if any, did you learn from it?
Well, one of the lessons that I think we all could learn from it is that it's necessary to be thorough in identifying people who are going to assume positions of responsibility in our nation so that we satisfy ourselves about that there are no skeletons in their cupboards, and also so that their capacities to do what needs to be done is tested. I'm grateful. I said to SANEF when they first invited me in 2012, I'm grateful that there was that unprecedented level of criticism. It solidified me. It sharpened my resolve to deliver, and also to know that when you are in a position of leadership, criticisms will come. So, for instance, the article you referred to about politics being muddy, I think I've been through something muddier than what politics can offer. But it taught me to forgive in advance.
Yeah.
Because you get distracted if you want to go blow by blow with people who hold a different view from you.
Somebody has to be an adult in the room. I'm reminded of the prophet Daniel, who had to be above reproach when he was appointed. How much has your faith, the very thing for which you were criticized, been your lodestar in the tough times?
It has always been. It taught me to appreciate that people are entitled to criticize me. No human being is above reproach. But I need to be focused. I should not be defocused by criticism. I need to be forgiving rather than looking for opportunities to settle scores that flows from the criticism that was leveled against me. So my faith has really stood me in good stead, and it continues to.
It's a faith not all of us share, I'm afraid. And just now bringing our conversation to some of what you've raised in recent weeks and recent days, you've spoken, for example, about the scourge of gender-based violence and framed the issue as one of the society in which we are living as being a sick one. When you call us a sick society. What do you mean?
I mean, we need to read the preamble to our Constitution. Part of what it says recognizes that we are sick. It says we must heal the divisions of the past. And you can't heal anything other than sickness. So the bottom line is, what are we suffering from that we need to be healed of? We need to be healed of tribalism, ethnicity, racism. We need to be healed of poverty. We need to be healed of crime. There is so much more that our society needs to be healed of.
I think for the layperson, obviously, one of the first things we look towards is the courts, because no matter how sick we are as a society in general, the crimes that are committed as a result of that sickness, if I extend that metaphor, are quite specific. And so we look to the courts for, at the very least, harsh sentences. I mean, the president himself has said we need to look at harsher punishments. That's not a view you necessarily share.
Well, I'm not against harsh sentences, as long as it's not our primary focus. I'm saying whatever the police, the National Prosecuting Authority, and the judiciary does is to treat symptoms. For this problem to be addressed properly, we need to identify the root causes of the challenges that confront us as a society, and crime is no exception. Because in my engagement with nations where there is stability and peace, they said no. It is not so much, and they don't impose harsh sentences. I say, how can you be so lenient on criminals? They say it is the predictability, the knowing that if you commit a crime, there will be consequences. That is the most effective deterrent of all. So it's good to go for harsher sentences without neglecting the crucial need to address the root causes of the problem.
Because you've got to catch the guys, you've got to build a solid case, you've got to be able to prosecute that case, and you've got to be able to, if obviously they're guilty, win that case.
That is true, but also why are they committing crime? Those are the root causes I'm talking about.
You've also spoken in terms of how our courts system functions. You've called for dedicated officers and magistrates to deal with particularly cases of sexual abuse. Would that be an admission that our courts are still not friendly places for victims of sexual abuse?
No, it has very little to do with the courts. It has got everything to do with the entire criminal justice system. You need more capacities there. You need properly trained police, properly trained prosecutors and magistrates and judges, so that they have the speciality, the expertise to deal with these kind of cases. I'm not too sure that we have that expertise at all levels, and that's my concern.
As far as what you are directly responsible for, what are your concerns? As far as judges, I mean, every now and again, it could be a magistrate, for example, who says problematic things around gender-based violence that at times it would seem mean that officers of the court aren't necessarily sensitized in the way they ought to be about these types of crimes.
Well, the overwhelming majority of judges and magistrates say the right things. And there will always be exceptions. And as and when somebody says something unacceptable, there will be consequences. My primary concern is in ensuring that we have the numbers that are necessary to deal with these offenses, and that there is special training given to people at all levels, particularly critical role players in the criminal justice system, to do justice to what the public expects of them to do.
You spoke last week about an approach, maybe even an offer of 600 million rand, which you turned down. What details can you give us around that?
I think it's enough to say I wasn't approached directly. There was a middle person that I respect highly, that I believe was coming to me innocently, and that's what makes it a bit challenging for me to disclose the details. It's enough to say it was an American billionaire who made an offer through a particular structure.
And what was the offer?
To modernize the courts. The offer as it was conveyed to me was, we've heard you say you do take 600 million rands to modernize the courts. We're willing to give you whatever amount we want. We won't be involved in whatever tender processes are to be embarked upon. You deal with the money as you please.
Somebody listening to that would say, That sounds like philanthropy. That sounds
Sure.
like benevolence.
Sure.
Why would you see it as capture? Because you said that's how capture begins and that's why you turned it down.
Why don't they go to the state, to treasury, and give money there? Why should I be approached directly? Why should it even be a secret approach? It should be out in the open. They know structures that release money to us. That's where they must go. But if you come straight to me, it becomes very suspicious.
Your office has been burgled. It has been attacked. And it's one of those things, as far as I know, that matter is still not solved in terms of what happened there. It's one of those things that is concerning.
It is, especially because of how the matter was handled. Initially, we were told that the computers had been located, they are with some business person, they will be brought back, and the person would be arrested. But we only got to know via the media that the case was withdrawn. We were not formally informed. It was only when I had a meeting with the Minister of Police and complained that a formal letter came that they are no longer pursuing the case.
And that's that.
And that's it. There's nothing we can do. We are at the mercy of those charged with the constitutional responsibility to investigate.
So as as an ordinary citizen, I think if that's how your matter is dealt with, what happens to ordinary Joe Soap like me? What happens to the man on the street?
I think that's a question best,
Answered by them.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to ask you to put on your headphones. We've asked our listeners to to call in and be part of the conversation. I don't want to hog all of it. George, you're in Harties. What's your question? Please make it brief to the Chief Justice. Go ahead.
It's not a question. It's a comment. Chief Justice, I am proud of you. So are many South Africans. You make me sober out of this world that is so rotten. Please keep up the good work. Let nothing be Mtomboti, who made a comment about it being dead. They have long been involved. Your department has been involved because politicians couldn't make decisions. Where do they rush you? They rush to your department. That is why we need to be involved. Thirdly, a leader like you comes with a very, very scarce to us, people of South Africa. Please continue doing what you're doing. We really honor you. We really respect you. Your name will be there in the books of good citizens of this country. I salute you with the most respect that can be given to a man.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, George. Thank you, George, for that call. I mean, a lot of people, we started off looking at your career in terms of the criticism that you received, but some of the very critics that spoke most strongly against your appointment, I suspect, have probably come to you and said, we were wrong.
Well, I was actually surprised that they apologized in the public domain, in the media, and it was unsolicited. I was taken aback because, the truth be told, I never bore a grudge. I don't hold grudges.
All right, let's go to Robert, who's in Parkview. Robert, your quick question for the Chief Justice?
Good morning. A question, in particular with multiple rapes. Why are sentences served concurrently and not consecutively?
All right,
That would
Robert.
keep the person behind bars for a long time.
Okay, Robert, thank you for that call. What's your response to it?
If it is a life sentence, and on the understanding that life sentence is life sentence, you only have one life. So you can't serve 5 life sentences, for instance. Otherwise, they become consecutive concurrently if there is a minor offense involved, because it would be known that the life sentence would cover everything.
I started our conversation by saying that the judiciary has stood as a bulwark against the sternest tests that our young democracy has faced. How close to the precipice did we go in terms of the continued challenges to our constitutionalism, as broadly as you want to answer that?
It's a very difficult question to answer because I don't have the capacity really to measure the extent to which we came close to the precipice. It's enough to say it looked like we were getting too close at the time when gratuitous criticisms were being leveled against the judiciary, and it really seemed like a free-for-all. Happily, there was that intervention that I alluded to at the beginning, and the situation stabilized, and never again did we come across criticisms of that level, of that nature, I beg your pardon.
Are you optimistic about the country we are in and where we might be going?
I'm very optimistic. I think about it. I always tell people between 1990 and 1994, it didn't look like we're going to ever vote. It didn't look like a solution would be found. But here we are. We are a resilient people. What we need to do, I think, is to focus on positive things that are out there. Let each and every one of us be preoccupied with finding solutions. Let those like-minded South Africans come together and keep on addressing the challenges that confront our nation. We're too negative, too pessimistic at times when we shouldn't be.
What keeps you up at night?
Crime, the hopelessness of our people, because I get called all around the country. People invite me and say, please come and give us hope. So how to give our people hope and how to make us realize that the best is around the corner is what keeps me up.
We'll leave it at that. The Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng with us in studio. I'll take your responses to that conversation on 011 883 0702. It's been an honor, sir, and a pleasure. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you, my brother.